Hope. I think it's one of the most dangerous things in the world. It can, on the one hand, save your life. Or on the other hand, I think it can keep you in something that's slowly killing you. And the difference between these two outcomes is really obvious, especially when you're in the middle of it. See, from the outside, hope looks noble. It's praised, it's celebrated, it's encouraged, and you're told, don't give up, keep believing, stay positive, right? We hear these phrases in locker rooms and in sermons, on social media, even from people that love us. And I think they mean well, right? They want to see us win. But no one ever really talks about how hope can be a kind of armor that slowly turns into a cage. And if you're a young man who's trying to figure out how to navigate this world with integrity and intimacy, I think you've already felt this tension. On the one hand, integrity, it calls you to face the truth, no matter how ugly or uncomfortable it is. And intimacy, on the other hand, it calls you to be fully known, to let people see your real fears and desires. And the thing is, denial wears a disguise that looks a lot like hope. And it whispers to you saying, if you just keep believing, you won't have to face what's real then, right? And it's a real seductive lie. Like, I know what it's like to cling to hope for too long. I've told myself that things were going to change and get better, right? That the friendship was going to repair by itself. Or the girl that I really cared for would eventually see me the way I saw her. Or that the job that I really hated would magically become fulfilling if I just stayed patient. And I didn't realize that what I called hope was actually my refusal to confront something that scared me, and that was the grief of letting go. See, here's the thing that no one really warns you about. Grief isn't just for funerals. Grief is what you feel when the dream that you've been holding dies. It's a lump in your throat when you realize the person you've been waiting for is never coming back. It's the knot in your stomach when you see the truth that you've been avoiding and you know that you can't unsee it anymore. And the problem is that denial feels easier, right? Especially in the short term. Hope, when it's actually denial in disguise, it gives you a way of avoiding that grief. You don't have to admit that your effort has gone to waste. You don't have to feel the embarrassment of telling people that it didn't work out. You don't have to reimagine your future without the thing that you really wanted the most. And so you keep smiling, you keep telling yourself it's just a matter of time, and you keep pushing down that gnawing feeling that you're really lying to yourself. And this isn't just weakness, I think it's also human nature. Our brain is wired to avoid pain. But here's the cost though. The longer we pretend, the more we lose touch with ourselves. And for men especially, the culture already teaches us to suppress, to keep our emotions at arm's length, to measure our worth by our ability to endure or to treat openness as a liability. And denial fits neatly into this mold, doesn't it? It feels like strength and discipline. But really, it's like erasing our inner life slowly. And we might tell ourselves that we're staying for the sake of loyalty. We might frame it as giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? We might insist that it's faith, not fear, that's really keeping us here. But deep down, we know the truth. The voice that's telling us to just hold on is also the voice that's telling us not to rock the boat, not to ask the hard questions, not to face the discomfort of hearing the answers. And when we ignore hurt in the name of hope, we're in essence teaching ourselves that our feelings are negotiable. And we tell ourselves that the data that we're gathering about our own life is really less reliable than the fantasy that we've built in our heads. And we stop listening to our instincts, the ones that used to protect us from wasting our time or our energy or even our love. It's not that optimism is bad. Far from it. No, it's the thing is optimism, like any strength, can become a liability when it's disconnected from reality. A man who's optimistic without being honest is like a sailor who's refusing to check the weather before he sets out on his course. His courage might be admirable, but it won't stop the storm from capsizing his boat, will it? See, there's a cost to this. Over time, our silence about what's wrong turns into this performance of positivity. And we start censoring ourselves around the people who might challenge that narrative. We start avoiding the friend who will ask the hard questions. And we post the smiling photos while quietly on the inside we're unraveling. And the longer we do this, the harder it becomes to even tell ourselves the truth. And the real danger isn't just that we waste our time. It's really that we'll build a life on top of this denial. And when the cracks finally start showing, everything on top of it just comes crashing down. Relationships collapse, our mental health spirals, and it's not because we didn't have enough hope, but it's because our hope was built on this refusal to see what's real. Now, if you're listening here and something in you is feeling exposed, I want you to take that as a good sign. It means that there's still this part of you that can tell the difference between optimism and avoidance. And that part of you is worth listening to, even if it's whispering to you right now. See, the first act of integrity is to name the truth, even if we don't know what to do with that truth yet. The first act of intimacy is to let someone see you and trust that even if you don't have all the answers, that's okay to be seen in that zone. That's the kind of hope that doesn't really dissolve under pressure. It's not about expecting the best, regardless of reality. It's more about believing the truth is the best foundation that we can ever build anything on. See, one of the hardest truths I think to accept is that reality doesn't just bend because you want it to. You can pour in all the effort and show up with consistency and even convince yourself that you're making progress. But if the other person or if the situation is not willing to meet you halfway, your hope can't carry the entire weight forever, can it? And for a lot of men, admitting this is terrifying. We've been told since boyhood that quitting is weakness, that persistence is defining the defining trait, if you will, of a man's worth. And there's truth in that. Discipline does matter. Sticking with a goal through discomfort matters, yes. But persistence isn't the same as refusing to see the obvious. There's a point where staying the course isn't strength anymore. It becomes a form of self-abandoning. And the tricky thing is that our culture often rewards that appearance of perseverance, even if it's hollow. You'll get pats on the back, right, for staying positive. And people will admire that you never give up. And the thing is, they won't be the ones who are paying the emotional bill, though, when you finally realize that the thing you've been fighting for was never really going to happen. They won't be there when you're staring at yourself in the mirror and you're wondering, why didn't I just walk away sooner? And if you've ever stayed in a relationship, long after it's stopped being mutual, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. You remember the moment when you realized that the love that you were holding on to wasn't the same love that you were getting back. I think you remember the sick feeling inside your stomach when you replayed the times that you ignored the signs because you didn't really want to believe them. That's the cost of confusing optimism with denial. And the person you end up betraying the most is really yourself. Now, the same applies outside of romance too, I would say. Maybe you stayed in a friendship or in a group of friends where you constantly were feeling like the outsider, convincing yourself that it's just a phase, right? Maybe you poured yourself into a career that's slowly been draining you, and you've been telling yourself you just have to tough it out for just a few more years. And so you ignore the dread that creeps in every Sunday night when your week is about to start. And you numb yourself to the fact that you can't remember the last time you genuinely felt alive doing the work that you do. See, denial doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes denial looks like routines and polite smiles and just going through the motions. And sometimes it even looks like stability, but only because you've built a routine that keeps you far away from asking the dangerous questions. And for men, especially, I think, there's a deep cultural script that says your value comes from enduring hardship without complaint. If you're hurting, the message is don't make it someone else's problem, just carry it. And if you're disappointed, the message is shake it off and keep moving. On the surface, that can sound like resilience, but resilience without truth is just a longer road to collapse. The real strength is in telling yourself the truth, though, even when it dismantles the story that you've been living in. And that's not comfortable. It's not glamorous. You won't get a standing ovation for this. But in the long run, it's a thing that saves you from building an entire identity on top of this lie. And here's the part that gets overlooked. Optimism and denial can feel exactly the same in the moment. Both give you the sense of relief from the fear that things won't work out. Both let you delay having to face the grief. Both of those can keep you smiling in situations that deep down you feel like you're breaking. And the difference is that optimism is grounded in truth, though, while denial is avoiding the truth. Optimism says, I see things clearly, reality clearly, and I believe that something good can still come from this. Whereas denial would say, if I don't look too closely, maybe this will all just magically fix itself. And you can test which one you're living in just by asking a simple question, and that is, if nothing changes, will I still be okay? And if the honest answer there is no, and you're still clinging to the hope that it will change, you're likely in denial. Optimism would actually acknowledge the possibility of change, but also build a life that isn't entirely dependent on the change happening, right? So facing that can hurt. It can feel like you're giving up on a dream or like admitting that you failed. But what you're really doing is you're choosing truth over fantasy. And that's one of the most important acts of integrity that you can make, I think. Because the longer you live in denial, the more that you're losing touch with what's actually possible. There's a quiet kind of dignity that really comes from looking at a situation and saying, this is what it is. I wish it were different, but I'm not going to lie to myself about it anymore. That's not cynicism, you see. That's clarity. And clarity is what really allows you to put energy where it can actually matter, towards people and goals that can actually meet you in the middle. And some of the most courageous men I've ever met are the ones who walked away from something that they once thought they couldn't live without. They're the ones who said no to the relationship that was slowly eroding them, right? And they're the ones who quit the job that promised security but really delivered this soul deep exhaustion. They're the ones who stepped away from the roles that they thought their destiny was wrapped up in because they realized the cost was too high to pay. It's not that they stopped hoping. They just shifted their hope away from the fantasy towards something they could actually build. And they stopped investing in the idea that what could be that would never happen. And instead they just started investing in what is. And that shift, I think, is where integrity and intimacy come back into the picture. Integrity because they're being real with themselves, and intimacy because they're no longer holding or hiding the truth from the people who are closest to them. And it's easy to confuse denial for hope when you've been taught that a real man doesn't admit defeat. But admitting reality isn't defeat, though. It's really the first step toward the kind of victory that actually lasts. When you start stepping out of denial, the first thing you notice is how loud reality actually is. That the signs that you were ignoring before now suddenly feel obvious. The body language you once brushed off is now like flashing warning lights. And the conversations that you thought were harmless now, when you play them back in your mind, have this entirely different meaning. And here's the thing. The flood of clarity can be brutal. And this is why a lot of men, I think, turn right back into that denial that they once were in. It's not that they don't want to live with integrity. It's that the cost, though, of seeing things clearly is often a kind of grief that they don't feel equipped to really be able to handle. Grief is a strange companion. It doesn't just sit quietly in the corner while you're keeping up with your life. Grief interrupts your day. It pulls you into these memories that you didn't ask to revisit. It demands that you feel the things you've worked so hard to bury and suppress. Denial, by comparison, it feels safer. It offers you the illusion of control, right? It tells you that you can keep moving forward without really having to fall apart. But here's what I've learned, though, and I wish that someone had told me this much earlier in my life. Grief is not your enemy. The pain you feel when you finally admit the truth is not proof that you've made the wrong choice. It's proof that you're finally dealing with the life as it is, not as you wish it to be. And that's the only place where real change, I think, can happen. A lot of men confuse numbness for strength. They think that if they can just get through the breakup or a betrayal or disappointment without feeling much, it means that they've mastered themselves. But numbness is not mastery. Numbness is a shutdown. It's the emotional equivalent, if you will, of closing your eyes while you're driving and then trying to trust the car to stay on the road. You might make it a little ways without crashing, but eventually you're going to hit something. And you can't ignore that, right? The danger of living in denial isn't just that you waste time, though. It's that you're training yourself to doubt your own perception. Every time you tell yourself, it's all right, I'm good, when it isn't, you're eroding trust in your own instincts. And then when you do this over years, it turns into this deep confusion about what's real and what isn't. And you end up second guessing everything, including the people who genuinely have your back, because you spent so long forcing yourself to believe what you knew wasn't true. And that's why breaking out of denial often feels a lot like you're learning to walk again. You, in essence, have to relearn how to trust your own eyes and your own guts, your own read of a situation. And that's where hope can become this powerful ally again. Not the kind of hope that covers up reality, but the kind that actually walks alongside it. Hope that is grounded in truth, is a steadying force. In essence, it lets you say, yes, this hurts, and yes, there's still something worth moving toward. It doesn't erase the loss, but it does stop you from building a life around avoiding that loss. And it frees you to make choices based on what's actually possible, not what's comfortable to imagine. And when you live that way, you start to notice something. And that is the relationships that survive your honesty actually get stronger. When you're not pretending that everything is fine, the people who stay in your life know that they're with the real version of you, not the curated version that you've put on to keep up the peace. And that's where intimacy actually begins to take deep root. For young men especially, this is a crucial shift. You don't build a meaningful life by surrounding yourself with people who only know how to love the version of you that's always okay, right? You actually get to build a life by letting people see you as you are, even when that means that you're hurting or when you're confused or unsure, because those are the moments that actually prove whether the connection was genuine. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to spill your whole soul to everyone. Discernment does matter in this setting. See, not everyone has really earned the right to hear your pain. But the answer to avoiding denial is not isolation. It's selective openness. It's choosing to be real with people who actually have shown you that they can handle your realness. There's also the piece on self-respect that grows when you stop hiding from the truth. You start to feel a different kind of strength where it doesn't, it's not how much you can endure anymore, but from how honestly you get to live. That strength doesn't just vanish when circumstances get worse. It's not dependent on outcomes. It's really yours because it's rooted in reality. The other side of this is just as important, I think. When you stop living in denial, you stop enabling the dysfunction that happens around you, whether it's in the relationship or in the workplace or in the friendship. Your willingness to name what's true will change those dynamics. Sometimes people will rise to meet you there, and other times they'll walk away because they would rather stay in the comfort zone that you facilitated with pretending. Either way, you're going to be free because you're no longer bending yourself into shapes that hide the truth. And it's in this space here that hope becomes a truly powerful ally. See, now you're no longer hoping that the toxic situation will magically transform. Now you're hoping for something better because you're actively creating those conditions for that dynamic. You're building the kind of life where good things have room to grow rather than trying to force them to grow in soil that's already been poisoned. And this is where integrity and intimacy come full circle again. Integrity, where it's being aligned with your own truth, keeping you grounded, and intimacy because it's letting others into you see, right? Keeping you connected. See, without integrity, intimacy becomes fragile and unsafe. And without intimacy, integrity becomes cold and disconnected. Both of those are necessary if you want hope to be a source of strength instead of a shield against reality. The men who learn this early in life set themselves up for this kind of stability that it can't be shaken by every disappointment. They don't get trapped in these cycles of waiting for people to change around them. They don't waste years on relationships or situations that keep them small. They build a life where their hope is matched by their honesty. And that combination is unstoppable. So if you've been living in denial for a while, breaking out of it can actually feel like waking up in a totally different world. Everything may seem sharper, the good and the bad. The conversations that once felt harmless now reveal layers that you hadn't noticed before. The decisions that you made without thinking suddenly come into question. And it's tempting to wish that you could go back to comfort of not knowing. But that comfort wasn't really comfort, was it? It was numbness that cost you more than you realized. It cost you the chance to build a life based on reality. It costs you the trust in yourself that comes from facing what's true, right? Even when it hurts. And it costs you the relationship that could have been deeper if you'd let them see you as you really were. Now, the first challenge you'll face after leaving denial is most likely loneliness. See, not everyone is going to understand why you've changed. People who benefited from you pretending may certainly pull back. They might even accuse you of being negative or cynical now that you're more honest. And in those moments, it's easy to wonder if maybe you've made a mistake. Now, this is where you have to anchor yourself in something deeper than other people's comfort. It's in these moments you have to remind yourself that integrity isn't about being palatable. It's about being aligned. You're not trying to be difficult. You're trying to live in a way that doesn't fracture you on the inside. And that's not selfish. That's survival. Over time, the loneliness will fade. And it'll get replaced by something better. And that is relationships where you don't have to pretend. And that's worth far more than the shallow comfort of being liked for the version of you that isn't real. And here's the beautiful irony. When you stop pretending, you're in essence opening the door for others to stop pretending as well. Your honesty is what gives them permission to bring their whole selves into the room. And this is especially important for young men, I would say. So many of us grow up with this unspoken rule, and that is, don't make anyone uncomfortable, right? Keep it light, keep it strong, keep it together. And while there's nothing really wrong with being steady, that steadiness can become hollow if it's built on the avoidance of truth. Strength isn't never bending. It's being able to bend without breaking. And that only comes when we're willing to face what's real. So if you want to move from denial into grounded hope, start small. Notice the little truths that you've been brushing aside. Maybe it's that you're more tired than you've admitted you were, or that a friendship has really been one-sided for many years, or that you've been making excuses for someone because you really don't want to face what their choices actually mean. These are the places where you can start rebuilding trust in your own perception. Now, the next step, I think, is to let someone you trust to be able to come in and see you. Not the whole world, just one or two people who've proven that they can hold your truth without weaponizing it against you. And when you speak your reality out loud to someone who is safe, it might become harder to gaslight yourself. You start to realize that your experiences are actually valid, and that you're not imagining things, and that you read on the situation what was actually there. And then from there, you can start making decisions that are based on truth rather than illusion. Sometimes this is going to mean that you're going to end something you once hoped would work. Sometimes it will mean that you're setting new boundaries that shift how people relate to you. And yeah, it will also mean facing loss. But those losses create space for better things to take root, right? And the key here is to remember that denial is not just a personal habit. It's a cultural one. We live in a world that often rewards the appearance of happiness more than the reality of wholeness. Social media thrives on this curated positivity, and workplaces value team players who don't make waves. And families often prefer the child who keeps the peace over the child who names the problem. And in that environment, staying in denial can feel a lot safer, right? But safer doesn't mean better. And what's safer in the short term can actually be destructive in the long term. And you can spend years in relationships that drain you, and jobs that devalue you, and a version of yourself that isn't you, all because hope got tangled up with denial. And the sooner that you can separate the two, the sooner you'll be able to build something that's truly worth hoping for. Grounded hope is active. It doesn't sit around waiting for change. It participates actively in creating it. It says, I see what's wrong, and I still believe in the possibility of what's right. So it refuses to gloss over harm, and it also refuses to give harm the final word. It's that kind of hope that isn't going to break you when the truth is hard. It strengthens you to meet that truth with clarity and with courage. And here's the part that I don't think most people will tell you. Living with grounded hope actually feels lighter. Not because the world magically gets easier, but because you're no longer carrying the weight of pretending. You stop spending energy on keeping the facade intact. See, now you're free to use that energy on building a life that you actually want. And for me, the biggest shift came when I realized that I wasn't betraying hope by naming the hurt. I was actually honoring it. I was saying, this matters enough to me that I want to see it clearly. I want to meet it as it is, not as I wish it to be. And that's not giving up. That's showing up. So if you're a young man hearing this in this moment, I want you to know something that I wish someone had told me. You don't have to choose between hope and truth. You can actually have both, but only if you're willing to let hope grow up. Immature hope hides from hard things, whereas mature hope faces them head on, knowing that the only way to truly heal is to stop pretending that you're not hurt. And when you live that way, you stop being tossed around by every disappointment. You stop investing in things that are built on sand. And now you start to see that your capacity for joy is directly tied to your capacity for honesty. And the deeper that you're willing to face that hurt, the more space you create for the kind of hope that doesn't shatter under pressure. And that's not just optimism, that's resilience. That's integrity, I'd say. That's intimacy. And it's worth every bit of discomfort that it takes to get there. I hope this has served you well, my dear listener. Let me know in the comments how this landed with you. I'll see you in the next episode.